Hey, so what is going on everyone? It is me, Mr. Mario, and today we're going to be covering a tutorial on how to switch regions using a installed region switch on a Japanese or an American GameCube. Now before we get into this, I'm going to try and answer a few frequently asked questions right here before the tutorial starts. The first thing would be, if I have a European or PAL GameCube, can I do this? No, you cannot. This is only going to be for American and Japanese GameCubes. If you have a PAL GameCube, you're out of luck. Another question might be, is this the same as a mod chip or can this replace one? No, this does not. So some people might ask, what is the point of this chip then? If you still want to play original games, but for example, if you have an American GameCube and you don't want to get a Japanese one, you can install this switch right here and then you can flip the switch before booting on your system and you can switch between American and Japanese modes and vice versa with a Japanese console. Aside from that, all this switch does is change regions to allow you to play games from other regions that are originals. It is not going to allow you to play copied or backed up games or anything like that, and you cannot switch it over to a European region. Now essentially at this point, if you are trying to play European games or you own a European GameCube and you're trying to play American or Japanese games, that is going to be a whole nother thing, and at that point you'd either need a mod chip or something like Action Replay or another type of application that would allow you to play out of region games. But aside from that, this switch is not going to help you out. Now, if you're ready to do the modification, I would recommend watching this tutorial one way through to make sure that you have everything available to do this mod and you understand it, and then once you decide to do it, if you go through with it, I would recommend watching this video a second time and following along with that. So with that being said, the first thing I would recommend doing is while you're looking at this, go down below the description and check out the iFixit link that I have available for taking apart a GameCube and setting up this switch in there. The reason why you're going to need that is because if you've never taken apart a GameCube, it can be a little bit confusing, and you're also going to have to take it down to the motherboard and remove the CPU heatsink because there's going to be 2 points that we need to access down below. To go along with the necessary tools needed to remove everything from your GameCube and take it apart, and also the necessary soldering skills and tools, I'm also going to recommend you're going to need some wrapping wire, also known as Kynar wire or 30 AWG wire. You're going to need some wire strippers respective to that, and you're also going to need a switch. Now don't use a button, use a switch because it's going to be easier to use on your system. And now when you have your GameCube taken apart, you're going to need to look where I am showing you right here and highlighting underneath the CPU and everything. There's going to be a few points and resistors. Now you're going to see an R5 and an R6, and you're going to be looking for the one that has 2 points that are just open, because there's going to be 3 little sets and 2 of them will have resistors and 1 of them will have open points, and you're going to want to solder on the points that are opened up and don't have anything on them. So for example, if your R6 has a resistor on it, you're going to want to solder to the R5 points. If your R5 has a resistor on it, you're going to want to solder to the R6 points, and that is going to vary respectively on if you have a Japanese or American console. Now once you find the points, I recommend taking something like rubbing alcohol or isopropyl alcohol. I personally use 99% isopropyl alcohol and clean up the points really well. You're also going to need to use some flux, and we're going to be tinning these. So what you can do is take the flux and go ahead and just dab it and glob it on so it's all available right there. I personally use Kingbo flux as that's going to make a stronger and cleaner bond, and then from that point you can go ahead and take your soldering iron and touch to the 2 points that you're going to be soldering. Now I need to warn you all, these points are really small, so just be careful with them, and you're probably going to have to try a little bit when you're soldering later on. Now what you need to do is you need to take your wires that you have cut and stripped the ends off of just a little bit, and you need to go in and solder them to the 2 points that are available. You're just going to want to solder one wire to one point and another wire to another. Now as I said, these are really small points, so what I recommend is when you are done soldering, just tug at it lightly, and if it doesn't come off, don't touch it after that. But you want to do that with both of your wires. At this point, what you can do is take your switch and prepare it by fluxing it up really well and tinning each point that you want to solder to, and then you solder one wire to each point that is available. Now, as you can see, my switch right here only has 2 points, and it does not matter what order you solder the wires to, which is really nice. So you can solder them whichever way you want, but one has to be on one point and another has to be on another point. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. If you have a switch that is different, like it might have 4 points or it might have 6 points on it, most of the time you could do something like solder one wire to the bottom and one wire to the top, or solder one wire to a middle switch point and one wire to one on the side or one on the top, whatever you want to. Essentially, they just have to be in different areas, but I'm soldering one here to the positive and one to the negative. And once you solder both wires on there, you should be good to go. After that, we can bench test our GameCube and make sure it works. So once you have everything set up, partially put together your GameCube so you make sure you have all the essentials and turn it on. Now what will happen is you should see it boot up in one area. Mine right here, as you can see, boots up in Japanese. What you need to do is turn off your system, switch your switch's location to the opposite position it is in, and then turn your system back on. And what should happen is now it should boot up into another language. As you can see here, now my Japanese GameCube is booting up in English. If it does that, congratulations, the modification works. Now at this point you're done. The hardest part of this modification after soldering is going to be figuring out where that switch could go. What I did was on the back bottom vent, I cut out one of the little pegs right there and I just put the switch in there and used some hot glue. You could use hot glue, super glue, anything like that. I recommend hot glue just because it's easier and it's a little bit messy, but you can also remove it as need be, and that way I could just go around the back of my GameCube and flip the switch as needed between regions. Anyways, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. Hope this video helped you all out.